We're in Finland. We're not after moomins, we're after wolves, wolverines and bears. Let's see how we get on. In early June 2025, we flew to Helsinki and picked up an internal flight to Kajaani. The flight was just over an hour, and Kajaani was one of the closest airports to the hides that we were to visit over the next few days. Firstly, we would visit Ero Eera, 3 hours to the southeast of Kajaani, and the best place in Finland for Wolverine. We would then drive 2.5 hours north to Wild Finland, renowned for their wolf sightings. And for our third night, 2.5 hours further north still, to Martinselkonen, the place for bears. It was an easy drive down to Ero Eera, and we recommend a pit stop at Liska for some great food on the beach. That blueberry pie was every bit as good as it looks. We then turned onto gravel roads and continued deep into the forest before we came to the signpost that showed us we were at our destination. It was through the gates and then to their cozy cabin for a thorough briefing.
I think 3 or 4 sites at least. One of which is the forest just a couple, 200 or 300 meters from me.
And then time to photograph some squirrels. At around 2:30, it was time to leave for our hide for the night. They offer several hides, some of which are in the forest quite close to the lodge, but we were allocated the Uronlampi Lake hide, which was about a 15-minute drive, and completely beautiful. There was just enough time to soak up our surroundings before we were led into our overnight hide.
So here we are in the cozy hide. Camera holes here. Nice view through glass. You can see the guys just doing the baiting over there. Then you also have higher level. And then if you really want to, there's a ground level aperture as well.
It was time to settle down, make a coffee which is provided, and survey the scene. That log bridge looked like a photographic opportunity. The edge of the forest was about 60 meters away, and then there was also an elk carcass, which had been there for some days, but we were hoping might generate some activity. Closer still, all the logs had bait on them. It was time to settle down and wait and review the sightings book, which pleasingly suggested that there were plenty of wolverines around. The first couple of hours were quiet, just watching the gulls and the ravens as they took as much of the bait apart as they could. You wondered if there's going to be anything left for the animals. And then a couple of whooper swans came by. Suddenly there was a shape on the far bank, and our first wolverine appeared. This was a female who was known to have a den in the area. She took as much as she could and disappeared back into the forest. It was over pretty quickly, but a Wolverine's a Wolverine. After a long wait, a bear appeared from the forest behind the carcass. He was obviously nervous and unsure, and took his time to come any further forward. We held our breath. Would he? Wouldn't he? And then yes, he crossed the log bridge to the other side. The sightings book suggested that bears, whilst not uncommon, were certainly not an every evening occurrence. It was a great sighting, watching the bear make the most of the beautiful surroundings that were on offer. Sunset arrived around 11:30, and whilst it never got completely dark, it descended into a twilight which gave us the opportunity to get some sleep and take it in shifts. But an hour later, all thoughts of sleep were forgotten. Yes, from behind the carcass appeared a wolf, a white wolf. And she wasn't on her own. Nervously, checking his surroundings, the male wolf eventually made it to the carcass. A quick check of the sightings book revealed that these guys had been here a few days earlier, when the carcass was much fresher. What we didn't expect was for them to hang around for the next hour. They would disappear for a few minutes and then pop up somewhere else, the other side of the lake or back at the carcass. The twilight conditions and the distance to the carcass made photography quite tricky, so do bear that in mind. And then, just when we thought they'd gone, the male appeared to the right of the hides. Throughout their visit they were quite nervous, as can be seen from the tail, which was constantly tucked in. At 1:45, having been with us for over an hour, the two wolves finally departed for good. We were buzzing after that encounter, but there was no time to get any rest.
From the bank on the left appeared a large male Wolverine.
Firstly, he checked out the area around the carcass, but it wasn't long before he ambled forward, and we had an extended sighting close to the hide. This was the reason why we'd come to Ero Eera, and it was everything we'd hoped it would be. Once again, the sightings book suggested you would be unlucky not to see a Wolverine. After half an hour, he crossed the log, walked along the far side of the lake, and then disappeared into the forest. But the excitement wasn't over. Just 30 minutes later, to the right of the hide, a third wolf appeared, this one much more slender and sleek. Wolf sightings at Ero Eera were by no means common, and we could count ourselves extremely fortunate to have seen not one, but 3 wolves. This guy only hung around for a couple of minutes, and once he departed, that was the end of the sightings on what had been a memorable evening. Just before 7:30 in the morning, when our time in the hide came to an end, we reviewed our sighting entries, and what a busy night it had been. The entries between 1:45 and 1:45 are a bit chaotic because we couldn't keep track of all the wolves, but our photographs show that they were the same 2 that kept coming and going. Looking at other entries, some people saw very little, but we do wonder whether it's because they went to sleep after they saw their first Wolverine. Having 2 people certainly meant that we were able to make the most of the night. We then returned to the lodge, had some breakfast, and indulged in some more squirrel photography.
We were soon on our way north on good roads to our next hide experience. We may have finished with Wolverine, but we certainly weren't done with wolf and bear.